Look around you right now. Every single person you have ever met, everyone who has ever lived, every human in all of history, they all have one thing in common. Their mother survived the single most dangerous thing a human being can do, not fighting a predator, not surviving a winter, giving birth. For almost all of human history, the most likely way for a young woman to die was not a lion, not starvation, not the cold. It was having a baby. Childbirth killed more humans than any beast that ever walked the earth. And here's the strange part. No other animal on the planet struggles with it the way we do. A gazelle gives birth and is running within the hour. A cat has kittens in a quiet corner and barely makes a sound. But a human birth, for hundreds of thousands of years, was a life or death emergency every single time. So how did we survive it? How did a species this bad at giving birth manage to fill an entire planet? The answer is one of the most incredible survival stories we have. And you are living proof that it worked. To understand why human birth is so dangerous, you have to understand a problem scientists call the obstetrical dilemma. And it comes down to two things happening in our evolution that went to war with each other. The first thing was walking upright. Millions of years ago, our ancestors stood up and started walking on two legs. That was fantastic for survival. It freed our hands, let us see over tall grass, and let us travel huge distances. But to walk upright efficiently, the human pelvis had to become narrow. A wide pelvis is terrible for walking. So evolution squeezed our hips inward. And then the second thing happened. Our brains exploded in size. Over a couple million years, the human brain nearly tripled. Big brains made us smarter, better at tools, language, planning, everything that made us dominant. But big brains meant big heads. And now you can see the trap. We had a baby with an enormous head trying to pass through a birth canal that had been made narrow for walking. A giant head, a tight passage. Those two forces, walking and big brains, were pulling in opposite directions, and the human baby was caught right in the middle. In almost every other primate, the baby's head slides through the mother's pelvis with room to spare. In humans, the fit is so tight it's almost impossible. The baby's skull is nearly the exact width of the opening it has to pass through. There is quite literally no room for error, and it gets worse. Because the passage is such a tight, twisting shape, the human baby has to perform a complicated rotation on its way out, turning its head and shoulders at precise moments to fit through the curves. If anything goes wrong in that rotation, both mother and baby can die. This is why human birth takes hours, sometimes days, while most animals are done in minutes. Evolution painted us into a corner. So how did we possibly get out of it? The first part of the answer is that evolution made a desperate compromise. Since the baby's brain couldn't get any smaller without making us less human, evolution did the only other thing it could. It forced the baby out early. Think about how helpless a human newborn is. It can't walk. It can't cling to its mother like a baby monkey. It can't hold its own head up. It can do essentially nothing but cry. Compare that to a baby horse standing within hours of birth. A human baby is born, in a sense, unfinished. Because if it stayed in the womb any longer and grew any bigger, its head would never fit through. So we are all born too soon, as fragile, half-developed creatures. Because that was the only way to escape the trap. The price of our huge brains was being born completely defenseless. And that single fact would go on to shape everything about how humans live. But an early, helpless baby and a dangerous, twisting birth still needed one more thing to survive. And this is the real hero of the story. Other animals give birth alone. A cat wants to be left in peace. But somewhere in our deep past, human birth became something no other creature does. It became a team effort. Because the birth was so dangerous and the baby came out facing backwards, away from the mother, it was nearly impossible for a woman to safely deliver her own child by herself the way other primates do. She needed help. She needed other hands. And so human beings became the species that gathers around the mother. Scientists believe this Assisted birth goes back hundreds of thousands of years. Experienced women, the earliest midwives, would gather to help, to catch the baby, to guide it through that dangerous rotation, to know what to do when something went wrong. Knowledge of how to help was passed down from mother to daughter, generation after generation, becoming one of the most precious forms of wisdom a group could hold. The lion survives with claws. We survived with each other's hands. And this changed us in a deeper way than you might think. Because the baby was so helpless and needed so much care for so long, one person couldn't do it alone. Raising a human child took a whole group. This is where that famous saying comes from. It takes a village to raise a child. Except it wasn't a saying, it was survival. Grandmothers became essential, helping feed and raise children long after they could have their own, which may be the very reason humans live for decades past the age of having children, when most animals simply die. Fathers, aunts, siblings, the whole group invested in keeping these fragile babies alive. The danger of childbirth didn't just test us, it forced us to become cooperative, caring, deeply social creatures. The helplessness of our babies may be one of the main reasons humans became the most social species on Earth. Still, let's not pretend they solved it. For all their wisdom and teamwork, ancient birth remained terrifyingly deadly. We don't have exact numbers, but studying groups that lived traditional lifestyles suggests that a horrifying fraction of women died in childbirth over their lifetimes, and a staggering number of babies never survived their first days. Infection was a silent killer since no one understood germs. Bleeding could take a mother's life in minutes with nothing anyone could do. A baby positioned the wrong way, feet first or stuck, was often a death sentence for both. Every pregnancy was a gamble with a woman's life. Think about that. For hundreds of thousands of years, women faced this danger not once, but over and over, each time knowing they might not survive. The courage that took, repeated across millions of women across thousands of generations, is almost impossible to comprehend. And every one of them who made it, even once, is why someone is alive today. Which brings us back to you. Because here is the truth that this whole story has been building toward. You exist right now, watching this, because an unbroken chain of women, thousands upon thousands of them, stretching back hundreds of thousands of years, each survived the most dangerous thing a human can do. If even one of them, in that impossibly long line, had not made it through her labor, you would not be here. Not you, not your parents, not anyone you love. Every human alive is the end point of a continuous chain of mothers who survived, one after another, all the way back to the first humans in Africa. Not one link in that chain was ever broken. That is the real reason you're here. We think of human strength as something in our muscles, our tools, our weapons. But maybe our greatest survival trait was never any of that. Maybe it was the hands that reached out to help a frightened woman through the night. The knowledge passed from grandmother to granddaughter. The whole group that gathered to protect the most fragile members it had. The mother and the newborn. Evolution handed us an almost impossible problem. A baby that barely fit, born too soon, and utterly helpless. And we solved it the only way humans ever really solve anything. Not alone. Together. So the next time you think about how soft and civilized modern life has made us, remember what every one of your ancestors walked through to hand you the life you have. You are the proof that they survived, and that they were never, ever alone when it mattered most.